Welcome everybody to the 3D Printer Chat Show. This is the 3D Printing Podcast and I'm your host, Chris Garrett. Today I'm joined by Aaron Brewer and he's from 3D CAD software, cloud-based software, Selfcad. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm fine, thank you for having me.
So the Selfcad is really cool, and I've been talking to a few people about how they can graduate from things like Tinkercad into something more powerful, something more fully featured. There's a lot of things missing from Tinkercad that Selfcad has, and I've been going through the free trial. One of the cool things that I've found in Selfcad is it has a similar sort of operation as Tinkercad. It's easy to get into, but there's a lot of depth there, right?
Yes, basically we try to solve for the same type of people, most likely. I mean, it's students and makers who want to start without really dedicating full time or a few months of learning software, going to a full featured like Blender and so on. The idea is to keep it as simple as possible, but yet to facilitate complete functionality, and also to include a complete package especially for 3D printing. So, which includes, besides the CAD software, it includes ready objects, a library of about 80,000 objects ready to print with our partnership with My Mini Factory. And then we have a slicer, we have a magic fix. So basically the full package, it's online, so you can use it wherever you want, but also it includes everything, so you don't need anything else. And if you have your own printer, you can start taking ready objects we have in the library, or you can start designing, and basically it's a fully featured CAD software, and then you can slice it and create the G-code ready to print, everything in one package.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about the CAD side is instead of it just, you can have some basic shapes, just like Tinkercad, you can drag them in, so you've got, a cube or a cone, but the transformations are way more powerful. You've got things like bevels, you can skew, you can twist, and that is taking it to a whole different level. These things aren't available in Tinkercad. But then you said you've got a slicer as well. So that slicer is browser-based also?
Yes, everything is browser-based. Actually, Slicer is the only thing that we develop basically everything from ground up. So first of all, I want to say about the comparisons to Tinkercad about that. We have these obviously basic transformations, which are generally linear transformations, but we also have our own topology structure like most advanced CAD software. So we can do much more. So we have basically a lot of advanced transformations and many other features, and we are obviously continuing to building it out and adding even more. But when it comes to the slicer, that's actually the only thing that we didn't really build from ground up. It's actually source-to-source compiled from Cora engine. So today you can, it's the same idea actually what you can do with the way WebGL was compiled by Google, I guess, from OpenGL. We actually source-to-source compiled. It's not an easy task, but the basic algorithms, the source-to-source compiled from G-code, but we have developed our own interface. So the whole browser base is written from ground up, obviously, and has a lot of unique features that could be customized. So for example, if you are a service provider, if you offer, let's say, use 3D hubs or whatever, and you want to let people give you G-code, but you want to customize what they can, what options they may have and what not, you can customize the printing settings. So you can limit what they can do, and you can set the minimum, maximum, default, and even custom parameters. So it's quite customizable, but at the same time, it's really interchangeable with Cora engine. So we have just recently updated it. We have a test version online. I'm not sure if we use what time it will be released, but it should be, at the time we record now, it should be online for everyone in the next 2-3 days. which is based on the later Curve engine that has, I guess, over 100 available printers. And it's a 3-stage process where basically you select a printer that auto-populates the default settings related to the printer. Then you choose a material, which populates the settings on material, and then you left with limited settings. So on our previous online version, you basically needed to set everything, and this makes it much easier because there's many settings related to the printer that wouldn't really change based on object or material. And some settings, for example, heat is related to material. So, but this is mainly following the flow of the new Curve engine and so on. So, but yes, it is 100% browser-based, and it works as good as you can have a downloadable version from Curve, and it just goes file print from the Selfcad software, and it's available for you. And then you download the G-code. That's it.
And the fact that you didn't build it from the ground up is a really good thing with Cura, because Cura is a well-known name. People trust it. They know they're going to get good slicing results from it. So that's a great addition, especially as it's all browser-based. For things like education or people that are mobile, having it all browser-based is a really cool thing. No software install, no software licenses.
Yes, that's correct. And the thing is also it's browser-based. It's unlike other software which provides, there's other providers that give you access to Curve engine on the cloud, but they mainly operate them on a server, on their own servers, which is quite expensive and it's limited. This is, as I said, source-to-source compiled, so it's in your browser. So technically you can be offline and use it as much as you want. And this, that's why we can give it the same as the entire program. We can give it relatively inexpensive because everything works in your browser. We don't have to have hundreds of servers to service these. It's executing your computer in your browser.
Yeah, so let's talk about money for a second, because I'm still in the 30-day trial. So what happens after my 30-day trial expires?
Basically, you can upgrade. We always have coupons, so we can give for your readers also want, but we have in general, our base price is $9.99 a month, which includes everything, including continuous upgrades as we keep on releasing additional features. But we generally have available coupons, and if someone can't find them, they can ask us. But we also give it for free for students and for nonprofit organizations and so on. So we at the moment not really so price conscious. I mean, we will most people will not going to pay much less than that. But that's basically the base price for the beginning.
Yeah. So when we look at Selfcad and we compare it to, say, Blender, Fusion 360, Onshape, how do you stand out? Where do you see your differentiation? How do you position yourself in the market?
Basically, we target the people who don't really focus that much on mathematical part, and they don't want to have to learn the mathematics behind that, and they don't want to really spend that much time learning the software. So obviously the CAD software is mainly, like if you think about Blender, that's kind of like a kitchen sink approach. Yeah. It has everything. They have rendering, they have, to some extent, and they have obviously a lot of advanced physics simulations, some of them, and they have everything. So Selfcad is focused solely on manufacturing. So we're not going to have anything, we're not going to have basically everything. We can have just what you need for printing. But at the same time, we didn't include features that complicates, that really needs you to understand. So you don't really need to understand the nature of what is a mesh and what is a derivative of a mesh and what is all of these things. It's basically, you get what you see and you can work with the objects, and you don't really need to understand the concept behind that. But at the same time, even for professionals, we added a lot of features to facilitate the things that you would typically do with others, would require much more work. So for example, we have an image generator that you can upload an image and it will convert to a workable object. We have some other shape generators. We have some macro builders. So we added quite a few unique features to make it easy to develop. But yes, if the target is to do more for video production and those type of things, we are not the right place to go. But if your target is to develop something, to design something for printing, we probably the fastest thing to get from start to finish and the whole package.
Yeah, and one of the great things is the fact that it's not parametric. So, like you say, you drag primitives around like Tinkercad, but then you can do so much more with them. And there are sketches and splines within Selfcad, right?
Yes, we have sketches and splines, and we are adding actually, as we learned what the users request us. So we had actually quite a few people who are industrial designers, and they say if we would just add more measurements and drawing and those type of things, they would use it, go, for example, from the like of SketchUp, come to Selfcad and so on. So we are actually adding these things. Over the next 2-3 weeks, we will have some major releases. But this actually fits into our user base as well, industrial designers, but not really for someone who would design something for a television production, for example, or those type of things, or physics simulations. You can do that in Blender, but we definitely not going to do it. I am thinking to add probably within the next 2 months or so, a texture. It doesn't really fit to our model because we have the idea that whatever you see, you can print, it's everything manufacturable. But I'm getting basically an excuse that some printers start supporting texture. So maybe I'm allowed to add that. So, but in general, we wouldn't add anything unless it's printable.
But one of the crazy cool features you've got is sculpting. So when we think of sculpting, we tend to think of things like ZBrush or Mesh Mixer, but you've got sculpting within Selfcad. So you could create organic shapes with this.
Yes, you can create with other tools as well. We have unique extrusion, for example, where you have an option to extrude the entire object and remove the edges, don't fill it, so which can create some organic shapes, some other unique things. But sculpting, yes, is one of the special features for organic shapes. And we are, as with everything, we will continue inventing. We will add soon more brushes. We initially added the brushes that we interviewed from designers that they most commonly used. We're not going to add like ZBrush 100 brushes. We're going to add what most people use. But as we listen to what people tell us, we're probably going to add 2-3 more brushes soon as well.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things that I like about Selfcad, which might sound strange, but it is definitely something missing from Tinkercad, is that history. Can you talk us through what the history is and how that's useful in a use case?
Yeah, so basically we have the idea from undo, redo, which obviously everyone designs CAD software needs that. So, but at the same time, we also log on object-based. So you can go in the scene panel and see the history of every object and go back to something. So if you work on an individual object, and you did other things in between, what a lot of people like, especially people who come like from Photoshop and those type of things, the type of people who would come to Selfcad, not really so much from 3D CAD software, and that's where we get the idea, more like from users, Photoshop users. They really like to have an object-based history, so you can go back on the object and see what you have done in this particular object in a specific state from previous and go back to it. So we do record those histories as well, and you're able to.
And you can go back to it and change it?
Yes, definitely.
So that's so much better than like Tinkercad and some of the similar packages where you actually have to treat the object like you hadn't worked on it at all and sort of take pieces away and add to it to correct mistakes that you made way earlier, or you have to save multiple versions. This actually has an object history, so you can go back if you make a mistake and change it.
Yes, and you can also save in the cloud. This the only thing we have actually in the cloud is the data storage, so you can save everything in the cloud and go back, which makes it also easier. You can create multiple scenes and save one scene to the cloud and start working on another scene and then load back previous scene and so so on. So basically, you can have a lot of flexibility with data and not to overload the application and just work everything in the cloud.
And when you've created an object, can you then use it in future projects?
Yes, definitely. You can download the object as an STL if you want to load it into other applications, or if you want to use it over here as well and just get a backup, you can save it either in a local storage or you can save it in the cloud. And obviously you can reuse it as needed.
Awesome. Now, tell me about this object library. That sounds like it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, so this is basically what we focus on is obviously we have the CAD side, which we just discussed, but we want to really make it easy for someone to come in and start developing. So what My Mini Factory has, they have developed over the last few years a huge library. I think it's about 30,000 objects, but what they're unique, different than like Thinkiverse or the like, which have probably much more objects, many more, but they have everything that's there is guaranteed printable. So the way they work actually is if you upload something to them, you have to wait to get it approved, and then they actually physically print that. They first test in software, whatever software they use. They have a team of designers. They test it, and if it's tests on the software, then they go and actually physically print it and actually upload an image from it. So every single object that's available on My Mini Factory has been physically printed and guaranteed it's printable. And then what we have integrated with them is that you can go in Selfcad and search for anything within there, and you can immediately upload it within Selfcad. And you can the same thing, take your objects from Selfcad and post over there if you want to show off your objects that you've designed. So it goes both ways. But yeah, basically you have access to all of these objects. You don't need to go and find and download and upload. It just within the application. If you're in the middle of designing something and you need a piece rather than design it, you can just search for it and see how it looks like. We magnify, you see the image, and if you see it fits to your model, you just drag it in. That's it.
So that is a whole different reason to use this software, because now we're talking about bringing objects in, modifying them, making them how you want them, personalizing, and then going ahead and printing, right?
Yes, and it's not only the flexibility, the ease of use, it's also this required handling large objects. If you think about Tinkercad, I think the maximum object size, even if you want to upload, is 25 megabytes. They don't really handle that much. We have tested objects from My Mini Factory, which average objects we would play around over here for testing purpose was about 100 megabytes, and it's working. And the reason actually it was not released until now, because we're pushing a major update that will reduce the memory consumption and fix a lot of other issues that will make sure that it will work really fast, even with these large objects. So we basically have redone structural things. If you have a technical viewer, I can explain what we have done. But basically, it's going to be much, much faster, and it should work very, very smooth with these large objects as well.
Yeah, so again, for education or for prototyping, you know, the objects in there, there's even like the BBC microbit little computer card, and, you know, objects that you might want to size around, even if you don't actually use it in your project. So now, when it comes to printing, one of the things that we find, and you said that My Mini Factory is guaranteed to be printable, that's fantastic. But if we bring something in from, say, Thingiverse or something that we find on Facebook in a Facebook group, it's not always printable. You've got a tool for that as well, right?
Yes, I think if I can explain a little bit the problems that I see when I interact with some users and some universities that use us, and I see the questions I'm being asked. So I think it's important to clarify the type of problems that you can have. And if I can explain it a little bit with analogy so they will understand. So
go for it.
Yes. Okay. So basically if I can generalize it, there's three main problems. So the first thing is if you don't have volume. So basically every object must be closed. You can think about it in a way that if you have a line and it connects to the next line. The way the algorithms, the way the software will work, it will look at the neighbor, it will find one line and then go to the next line, the neighbor, and then the next line in an order, clockwise or counterclockwise. And then it needs to finish that cycle, and it needs to come back where it started. So if it cannot come back, then it wouldn't work. So if you have a hall, let's say a window, a door, everything you have, it can still go in by, if you make the inner walls, so you add thickness to it and you go into it, so it can still go to the next neighbor, then it will come back and come out and will bake, but it will always be closed. So otherwise, in general in 3D, that wouldn't work. So you must have, it's called, otherwise the object doesn't have volume. So this is something we have, something called add volume, which will automatically add, and then you can adjust the thickness from it, the wall thickness. Basically, it adds a wall thickness. This is one problem. Then we have something called magic fix. So there is a lot of other problems. I'll give an analogy, which is using, let's say, tiles. So you can think about, let's say you have a floor and you lay down tiles, and think about it in a way where one side of the tile is, the shiny side and whatever the texture it has, and the other side is just black, let's say cement, rough, whatever it is. So you can think about if you lay down the tiles and you lay down just randomly, one is the right side, one is the wrong side, and so on. This wouldn't be printable. It's completely broken. And in a 3D, the way the algorithms work, everything must be the right side, the way it's being calculated with normals and so on. And the same thing is if like one tile will be on another tile, or it will be overlapping, or whatever the case is. The way these software work is they work with primitives, which is basically the same thing idea. You can have a line and a connecting lines. You can have also triangles or quads, and they connect one to another, and that's how it's laid down. So if there's any problem with the order or whatever it is, these most traditional slicers, like if you go to Shapeways or these things, it wouldn't work. So what you have to do is you have to like retile it. So think about, we understand the layout, the entire blueprint, and what Magic Fix is doing, it's completely laying down tiles from the beginning, start to finish. It doesn't really care about, it's not we are fixing the problems. We like, if the face is flipped, we don't really flip it back, or all of these things which some software try to do, or tell you manually. Some software, if you go, will show you manually like which one is rotated and tell you to fix it, and you have to work like hours sometimes to really fix it.
Yeah.
We just understand the entire structure and we just retile it. We just lay down everything again, so that's fixed basically every problem. But ironically, that our slicer doesn't really need that. That's very good. If you would go to Shapeways, they wouldn't be able to take objects that has all of these problems. And they have a list of problems if you go on their website. So our Magic Fix will make it printable with them. But if you use our slicer, actually, it's not just ours, as I said, the Corel slicer, most of these problems actually is irrelevant. Because it's not working on a 3D, it's more like 2D slices, and they don't really care about that. So, but still, the Magic Fixes work, as I said, if you use it for other software, but also it's usable for designing tool as well. For example, we had someone created a Lego Batman using and he used the logo from the Lego Batman, just uploading an image. They found an image from the Lego Batman logo and he uploaded it. But because it was converted from image into geometry, it was a little bit too complex and difficult to work with. So he applied the Magic Fix, and then it was perfect to work with. I've seen some similar software where people would go to like Photoshop or GIMP or whatever, these software to trace the image to turn it into a vector and then upload, and then they still couldn't work with it because it's too complex. In this case, you upload an image and then use Magic Fix and it's working. So it's relevant even without printing. But then the third category, and this is really important, is it's not really an object problem. So the first two things I described, which doesn't have really volume, which is called manifold or watertight, whatever language you use, or it has any of these other structural problems on the object, those are a design problem. It's a general design from 3D, and you may have some other features that may have the same problem. It's not really specific to printers. There's many other algorithms that may encounter a problem with with that. But the third problem is related to printers. So if you would upload, let's say, a simple sphere to Shapeways, for example, you would typically get the entire volume printed. And I had this, learned it to myself once I started developing and I started doing some test designs, if our data structure works and so on, or some designs. I uploaded and I see it was really, really expensive. And then I received it was really heavy. So they basically print the entire volume. So the way people get around that is they create like an escape hole, which is basically you have to make a small hole and then you can hollow it, and so you have control on it. When it comes to our slicer, so this is basically, it's not a design problem, it's a printing problem. You want to save time and material costs for printing, so, and time of printing obviously. So you're trying basically to modify the object, literally destroying the object to just customize it for printing. What the curve-based slicer or Selfcad slicer is doing, you have the option to add the shell thickness and the infill. So basically, shell thickness is very similar to wall thickness, which is basically the amount of layers of material will be laid down. So if you make it, let's say 5, that means it will make it 5 layers, or 1 is just 1 layer of material. And then you have the infill, which is basically a percentage based, not amount of layers, but rather percentage based. You can make it, let's say 20% infill, and then you have a different structures. You can make it triangle based, quads, or we have I think 6 different styles, which gives it a different structural integrity, how strong the object is. And this is basically gives you much more flexibility than creating escape holes, because if you create escape holes, it's just the wall thickness. You don't have really control of shell thickness and definitely not control of the infill. In this case, your object stays the same. You don't need to change anything in the object. You don't need to break it. And the flexibility you have is really good, and you can control it 100%. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And the people use specialist software to do just one of those features, but it's all built into this.
Yes, if you look, for example, makeprintable.com, so people use that. I think you get for $7, 10 downloads, or 7 downloads, I don't remember, and for $25, 50 downloads. We do everything they do, and it's included in the package for free, and you can do it unlimited, as many you want. And we solve all of the problems they solve. We solve this the same way or even better.
Yeah, and Make Printable it's good, but it's not necessarily intuitive, is it? It's not like something that any student, school kid is going to be able to fix the model with. So that ease of use, I think, is really vital.
Yes, and this is nothing. If you go, as I said, the magic fix really doesn't require any knowledge from you. We don't really show you the problems, nothing. We just rebuild the entire object from ground up. So it solves basically everything. Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if I wanted to share my projects or my models, is there an ability for other people to be able to see the same thing that I'm seeing?
That's a very, very good question. We actually initially, when we designed it, we did have some sharing features. There are some limitations in the browser to share the screen unless you do a plugin, and we didn't want to do that. So we had many ways. At the moment, we removed that, but if people ask, we will add it back. It's technically quite easy to do that, but at the moment, we don't really have a built-in feature to share it, but it's quite easy. I mean, we just need to do it. If people ask for it, we will add that and see what people want. But yes, but it's not built in at the moment.
So the best thing would be to put it up on my mini factory to get feedback, get other people to see it.
Exactly. My mini factory, then you can browse. Actually, whenever you upload, if you go to Selfcad, or if to my mini factory directly as well, if you type in Selfcad, you can already see some objects people have uploaded, and we'll tag it, and we'll make it even easier. So besides the categories, the name of the objects, you can also search for Selfcad tag and find objects from Selfcad.
Cool. You've mentioned a few times you're listening to the community and listening to your users. Is there anything you can share about where Selfcad is going? What you're going to be adding next?
At the moment, we just finalized we signed up with a big educational company in India, for example, where they release Selfcad starting the next season. We'll start releasing it for a few thousand children, and within a year for about 50,000 children. We are still in the middle of negotiating with many other universities and so on. We have some nonprofit organizations talking with us, and then we have users, just regular users. The most difficult thing that we had is we really built that for newcomers to the industry, and we wanted to keep it simple and easy for them. But since we just launched a few months ago, and we didn't really have access to these people in the beginning, so what turned out is that our initial users were industrial designers, and we get a lot of feedback from them, but we take it with caution because it wasn't really designed for these people. Obviously, we'll be very happy to have them, but we don't want to complicate for average users. So we have to really wait and see, and we can't really do what a single person is saying. So we have to obviously get a lot of more data points and so on. But we need to see what the market tells us and what people would want, and we'll do it best on that. Further customize it.
So you're pretty much a startup. You said it only launched a few months ago.
Yes.
Okay, so expect growth and more features from here. This is brand new, and you're listening to the user base, so that's awesome.
Yes, and we will try to, whatever is being added, if it's a feature that could be similar. Let's say, for example, today I had some university ask me to add some snapping feature that if you move something and if an object goes parallel to another object, we should have an option to snap. I will add that because it doesn't really complicate. I can see everyone benefiting from it, and it doesn't change the UI. But if someone asks a specific feature that changes the UI, we'll be much more cautious. So we'll probably freeze the application as is, besides the few things we have in pipeline, and then things will be added as apps or plugins, things like that, which will be much easier to continue adding without complicating what we have.
Yeah, I like that idea of plugins because then you're not doing the blender thing of having the kitchen sink.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. We've come up to the 30-minute mark. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Anything you want to say before we go?
Yes, I have a big surprise. We are working on a CNC slicer. This is actually something we're writing from ground up. It will take some time, maybe another 2 months or 3 months, but this is something that will, besides our slicer for 3D printing, you will be able to use it for CNC machines, which I believe has a big future as well, and many objects.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
so that's, you could have subtractive as well as
exactly
additive.
Additive and subtractive.
That'll be amazing.
Yes, and that's the basic work is done, so we're just finalizing it, and so we'll have full support for any type of manufacturing.
And that'll be browser-based as well?
The same thing, browser-based, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, you'll have to come, when that's released, you'll have to come back and tell us all about it.
Gladly.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. As always, please subscribe, review us, like us, share us, and most of all, listen out next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.